Bulfinch's Mythology, Chapter 1, Introduction. The religions of ancient Greece and Rome are extinct. The so-called divinities of Olympus have not had a single worshipper among living men. They belong now not to the department of theology, but to those of literature and taste. There they still hold their place, and will continue to hold it, for they are too closely connected with the finest production of poetry and art, both ancient and modern, to pass into oblivion. We propose to tell the stories relating to them which have come down to us from the ancients, and which are alluded to by modern poets, essayists, and orators. Our reader may thus at the same time be entertained by the most charming fictions which fancy has ever created, and put in possession of information indispensable to everyone who would read with intelligence the elegant literature of his own day. In order to understand these stories, it will be necessary to acquaint ourselves with the ideas of the structure of the universe which prevailed among the Greeks, the people from whom the Romans and other nations through them received their science and religion. The Greeks believed the earth to be flat and circular, their own country occupying the middle of it, the central point being either Mount Olympus, the abode of the gods, or Delphi, so famous for its oracle. The circular disk of the earth was crossed from west to east, and divided into two equal parts by the sea, as they called the Mediterranean, and its continuation the Euxine, the only seas with which they were acquainted. Around the earth flowed the river Ocean, its course being from south to north on the western side of the earth, and in a contrary direction on the eastern side. It flowed in a steady, equable current, unvexed by storm or tempest. The sea and all its rivers on earth received their water from it. The northern portion of the earth was supposed to be inhabited by a happy race called the Hyperboreans, dwelling in everlasting bliss and spring beyond the lofty mountains whose caverns were supposed to send forth the piercing blast of the north wind, which chilled the people of Hellas or Greece. Their country was inaccessible by land or sea. They lived exempt from disease or old age, from toils and warfare. Moore has given us the song of a Hyperborean, beginning, I come from a land in the sun-bright deep, where golden gardens glow, where the winds of the north, becalmed in sleep, their conch shells never blow. On the south side of the earth, close to the stream of Ocean, dwelt a people happy and virtuous as the Hyperboreans. They were named the Ethiopians. The gods favored them so highly that they were wont to leave at times their Olympic abodes and go to share their sacrifices and banquets. On the western margin of the earth, by the stream of Ocean, lay a happy place called the Elysian Plain, where mortals favored by the gods were transported without tasting of death, to enjoy an immortality of bliss. This happy region was also called the Fortunate Fields and the Isles of the Blessed. We thus see that the Greeks of early ages knew little of any real people except those to the east and south of their own country, or near the coast of the Mediterranean. Their imagination, meantime, peopled the western portion of the sea with giants, monsters, and enchantresses, while they placed around the disk of the earth, which they probably regarded as of no great width, nations enjoying the peculiar favor of the gods, blessed with happiness and longevity. The dawn, the sun, and the moon were supposed to rise out of the ocean on the eastern side, and to drive through the air, giving light to gods and men. The stars also, except those forming the Wain or Bear, and others near them, rose out of and sank into the stream of Ocean. There the sun-god embarked in his winged boat, which conveyed him round by the northern part of the earth back to his place of rising in the east. Milton alludes to this in his Comus. Now the gilded car of day his golden axle doth allay in the steep Atlantic stream. In the sloped sun his upward beam shoots against the dusky pole, pacing towards the other goal of his chamber in the east. The abode of the gods was the summit of Mount Olympus in Thessaly, a gate of clouds kept by the goddesses named the Seasons, open to permit the passage of the celestials to earth and to receive them on their return. The gods had their separate dwellings, but all, when summoned, repaired to the palace of Jupiter, as did all those deities whose usual abode was the earth, the waters, or the underworld. It was also in the great hall of the palace of the Olympian king that the gods feasted each day on ambrosia and nectar, their food and drink, the latter being handed round by the lovely goddess Hebe. Here they conversed of the affair of heaven and earth, and as they quaffed their nectar, Apollo, the god of music, delighted them with tones of his lyre, to which the muses sang in responsive strains. When the sun was set, the gods retired to sleep in their respective dwellings. The following lines from the Odyssey will show how Homer conceived of Olympus. So saying, Minerva, goddess azure-eyed, rose to Olympus, the reputed seat, eternal of the gods, which never storms disturb, rains drench, or snows invade, but calm the expanse and cloudless shines with purest day. There the inhabitants divine rejoice forever. The robes and other parts of the dresses of the goddess were woven by Minerva in the Graces, and everything of a more solid nature was formed by the various metals. Vulcan was architect, smith, armorer, chariot builder, and artist of all work in Olympus. He built of brass the houses of the gods. He made for them the golden shoes with which they trod the air or the water, and moved from place to place with the speed of the wind or even of thought. He also shod with brass the celestial steeds, which whirled the chariots of the gods through the air or along the surface of the sea. He was able to bestow upon his workmanship self-motion, so that the tripod, chairs, and tables could move of themselves in and out of the celestial hall. He even endowed with intelligence the golden handmaidens whom he had made to wait on himself. Jupiter, or Jove, or Zeus, was called the father of gods and men. He himself had a beginning. Saturn, or Kronos, was his father, Rhea, or Ops, his mother. Saturn and Rhea were of the race of Titans, who were the children of earth and heaven, which sprang from chaos, of which we shall give a further account later. There is another cosmogony, or account of creation, according to which earth, Erebus, and love were the first of beings. Love, Eros, issued from the egg of Night, Nyx, which floated on chaos. By his arrows and torch he pierced and vivified all things, producing life and joy. Saturn and Rhea were not the only Titans. There were others, whose names were Oceanus, Hyperion, Iapetus, Ophion, the males, and Themis, Mnemosyne, Eurynome, the females. They were spoken of as the elder gods, whose dominion was afterwards transferred to others. Saturn yielded to Jupiter, Oceanus to Neptune, Hyperion to Apollo. Hyperion was the father of the sun, moon, and dawn. He is therefore the original sun god, and is painted with the splendor and beauty which were afterwards bestowed upon Apollo. Hyperion's curls, the front of Jove himself. From Shakespeare. Ophion and Eurynome ruled over Olympus till they were dethroned by Saturn and Rhea. Milton alludes to them in Paradise Lost, and fabled how the serpent, whom they called Ophion, with Eurynome, the wide encroaching Eve perhaps, had first the rule of high Olympus, thence by Saturn driven. The representations given of Saturn are not very consistent, for on the one hand his reign is said to have been the golden age of innocence and purity, and on the other he is described as a monster who devoured his children. Jupiter, however, escaped his fate, and when grown up he espoused Metis, or Prudence, who administered a drought to Saturn to cause him to disgorge his children. Jupiter, with his brothers and sisters, now rebelled against their father Saturn and his brothers the Titans, vanquished them, and imprisoned some of them in Tartarus, inflicting other penalties on others. Atlas was condemned to bear the heavens on his shoulders. On the dethronement of Saturn, Jupiter with his brothers Neptune, or Poseidon, and Pluto, or Dis, divided his domains. Jupiter's portion was the heavens, Neptune's the ocean, and Pluto's the realms of the dead. Earth and Olympus were common property. Jupiter was king of gods and men. The thunder was his weapon, and he bore a shield called an aegis, made for him by Vulcan. The eagle was his favorite bird, and bore his thunderbolts. Juno, or Hera, was his wife, and the queen of the gods. Iris, the goddess of the rainbow, was her attendant and messenger. The peacock was her favorite bird. Vulcan, or Hephaestus, the celestial artist, was the son of Jupiter and Juno. He was born lame, and his mother was so displeased at the sight of him that she flung him out of heaven. Other accounts say that Jupiter kicked him out for taking part with his mother in a quarrel which had occurred between them. Vulcan's lameness, according to this account, was the consequence of his fall. He was a whole day falling, and at last alighted on the island of Lemnos, which was thenceforth sacred to him. Milton alludes to this story in Paradise Lost, Book 1. From morn to noon he fell, from noon to dewy eve, a summer's day, and with the setting sun, dropped from the zenith like a falling star on Lemnos, the Aegean isle. Mars, or Ares, was the god of war, the son of Jupiter and Juno. Phoebus Apollo, the god of archery, prophecy, and music, was the son of Jupiter and Latona, and brother of Diana, or Artemis. He was the god of the sun, as Diana, his sister, was goddess of the moon.
Roman divinities. The preceding are Grecian divinities, though received also by the Romans. Those which follow are peculiar to Roman mythology. Saturn was an ancient Italian deity. It was attempted to identify him with the Grecian god Kronos, and fabled that after his dethronement by Jupiter he fled to Italy, where he reigned during what was called the Golden Age. In memory of his beneficent dominion, the feast of Saturnalia was held every year in the winter season. Then all public business was suspended. Declarations of war and criminal executions were postponed. Friends made presents to one another, and slaves were indulged with great liberties. A feast was given them, at which they sat at table while their masters served them, to show the natural equality of men, and that all things belonged equally to all in the reign of Saturn. Faunus, the grandson of Saturn, was worshipped as the god of fields and shepherds, and also as a prophetic god. His name in the plural, fauns, expressed a class of gamesome deities like the satyrs of the Greeks. Quirinus was a war god, said to be no other than Romulus, the founder of Rome, exalted after his death to a place among the gods. Bellona was a war goddess. Terminus was the god of landmarks. His statue was a rude stone or post set in the ground to mark the boundaries of fields. Pallas, the goddess presiding over cattle and pastures. Pomona presided over fruit trees. Flora, the goddess of flowers. Lucina, the goddess of childbirth. Vesta, the Hestia of the Greeks, was a deity presiding over the public and private hearth. A sacred fire, tended by 6 virgin priestesses called Vestals, flamed in her temple. As the safety of the city was held to be connected with its conservation, the neglect of the virgins, if they let it go out, was severely punished, and the fire was rekindled from the rays of the sun. Liber is the Latin name of Bacchus, and Mulciber of Vulcan. Janus was the porter of heaven. He opens the year, the first month being named after him. He is the guardian deity of gates, on which account he is commonly represented with 2 heads, because every door looks 2 ways. His temples at Rome were numerous. In wartime, the gates of the principal ones were always open. In peace, they were closed, but they were shut only once between the reign of Numa and that of Augustus. The Penates were the gods who were supposed to attend to the welfare and prosperity of the family. Their name is derived from Penis, the pantry, which was sacred to them. Every master of a family was the priest to the Penates of his own house. The Lares or Lares were also household gods, but differed from the Penates in being regarded as deified spirits of mortals. The family Lares were held to be the souls of the ancestors, who watched over and protected their descendants. The Romans believed that every man had his genius, and every woman her Juno, that is, a spirit who had given them being and was regarded as their protector through life. On their birthdays, men made offerings to their genius, women to their Juno. A modern poet thus alludes to some of the Roman gods. Pomona loves the orchard, and Liber loves the vine, and Pallas loves the straw-built shed, warm with the breath of kine. And Venus loves the whisper of plighted youth and maid, and April's ivory moonlight beneath the chestnut shade.